Let me get right to the point. America's space program these last 50 years have been a complete disaster, confirmed pointedly by the fact we have not been back to the moon since 1972, since achieving the most remarkable feat in human history, which inherently had boundless promise for America's and humanity's future. Who is to blame? There is no doubt it is our United States government, meaning presidents and Congress and the federal bureaucracy for the last 50 years. What have they accomplished towards our human presence in space? They have wasted billions and then many more billions of tax dollars on the so-called International Space Station and on a brain-dead space shuttle program whose only serious purpose was to ferry astronauts back and forth from the so-called space station. Let's not also forget the Mars junkies, or if you prefer, Mars lobby, who convinced our government to waste billions and indeed get giddy over sending one probe after another to Mars for the absurd purpose of possibly sending Americans to Mars in our lifetime to stand on the largest and most desolate desert in our galaxy. That is, if they somehow survive the 18-month journey in a small spaceship bombarded by deadly cosmic rays. How much interest has the government and our leaders shown about the moon during most of the last 50 years? Almost none. When if we had followed the Apollo program with the logical goal to establish permanent stations on the moon that American astronauts and others would travel back and forth to from with ever-increasing frequency, America's space program and its value to our national interests would be tremendous today. Instead, we do not any longer even possess the ability we had 50 years ago to send humans to the moon. It has all been trashed. There is no doubt history will look back upon that period as one of America's greatest failures, if not its worst ever. With this reality as prologue, this video essay is about the future of the moon. It is a future more robust and meaningful than you will see or hear elsewhere at all, but finally will with increasing frequency. What it is not is a future about millions of humans somehow fleeing the most marvelous body in our galaxy, Earth, to resettle permanently on the hostile lunar surface, which has no atmosphere we can breathe. But it is a future that must not be under the full control of the United States government. They have proven that will be nothing but a dead end. The government's useful role for the future of the moon is as a facilitator and a rules generator for operating on the moon and an important funding source. It is why May 9th, 2019, a presentation by Jeff Bezos in Washington, D.C. was the most important moment in the entire space program since Neil Armstrong first stepped on the moon July 20th, 1969, as you will see in this video essay. Jeff Bezos announced a very specific, ambitious, and realistic project for the private sector, for space-age entrepreneurs to lead the way back to the moon. First, with robot ships to land on the moon within the next few years to set the stage, to be followed by men and women returning to the moon, and to begin the human development of the moon that will change human history forever, most of all for us back on Earth. My contribution in this essay, after you hear Bezos speak, will be to introduce very specifically one aspect of our return that has only been vaguely touched on by others, but which I will argue is essential. The all-important catalyst to fuel and tremendously accelerate, in ways not possible otherwise, a spectacular future on the moon for the next 50 years and beyond. The all-important value of real estate, land on the moon.
On this July 20th, 1969.
That's one small step for man, diathlete for mankind.
It's time to go back to the moon, this time to stay. Round trip times to Mars are on the order of years. And launch opportunities to Mars are only once every 22 months, which is a very significant logistics problem. And last, you're far enough away that you're not going to be able to do real-time communications with Earth. And we have a gift. We were given a gift, this nearby body called the moon. We know a lot now about the moon that we didn't know back in the Apollo days, or even really just 20 years ago. One of the most important things we know about the moon today is that there's water there. It's in the form of ice. It's in the permanently shadowed craters on the poles of the moon. And water is an incredibly valuable resource. You can use electrolysis to break down water into hydrogen and oxygen, and you have propellants. Another great thing about the moon, another reason it's a gift, it's nearby. It's 3 days away. And you don't have constraints on launch, the 22 months kind of thing that you have with Mars. You can go to the moon just about any time you want. And of great importance for building large objects in space, the moon has 6 times less gravity than Earth. When you get resources from the moon, you can get them into free space at very low cost. It takes 24 times less energy to lift a pound off the moon than it does to lift a pound off the Earth. That is a huge lever. But guess what? The moon also needs infrastructure. Let me show you something. This is Blue Moon. We've been working on this lander for 3 years. It's a very large lander. It'll soft land in precise way 3.6 metric tons onto the lunar surface. The stretch tank variant of it will soft land 6.5 metric tons onto the lunar surface. Let me give you a little tour. The deck is designed to be a very simple interface so that a great variety of payloads can be placed onto the top deck and secured. And the davit system, which is inspired by naval systems, you can see it over here, is what's used to lower things off of the deck onto the surface of the moon. And the davits can be customized for the particular payloads. We have here as an example a very large rover. And by the way, even though that's a large rover, this vehicle can land 4 of them simultaneously on the surface of the moon. Liquid hydrogen. Why are we using liquid hydrogen? This is not how Apollo did it. Why are we using liquid hydrogen as our fuel? A couple of reasons. One, it's very high performance, and so that helps a lot when you're landing on the moon. That's that after you've got to carry all of your propellant to the moon. Second reason we're using liquid hydrogen is because ultimately we're going to be able to get hydrogen from that water on the moon and be able to refuel these vehicles on the surface of the moon and use them. So liquid hydrogen is an excellent choice for fuel for the moon. This is an incredible vehicle, and it's going to the moon. I have something else I'd like to show you. This is the BE-7 engine. It's liquid hydrogen, liquid oxygen. We're going to hot fire it for the first time this summer, which is the only reason we can do that is because we've been working on it for 3 years. But we need the new engine, and that's what this is. And it's very exciting. The team has made incredible progress. We have an incredible propulsion team. I'm going to show you a mission sim. This is not a cartoon. This is real physics here. We've been simulating this for a long time. You'll note a couple of things. One thing is when this vehicle, there are payload bays here on the sides, and when this vehicle is in orbit around the moon, as a kind of extra mission, a bonus mission, it can launch small satellites into orbit around the moon so that we can do certain kinds of science. You see it happening here. So we're deploying a number of small satellites before we do our landing. You're going to see a set of burns that will take us down to the surface. The primary burn is 6 minutes long. This BE-7 engine will be firing for 6 minutes. It's a very long burn. We verticalize about 1 kilometer above the surface. You can see that happening now. A very precise landing, again, using those flash lidars to detect surface features and using those for navigation. Now we're going to watch as the Davit system, which is inspired by a naval system, deploys a rover. Look at those long shadows. The shadows are always long on the poles of the moon. Wow. And we have formed a science advisory board. They're with us here today. Would you guys mind standing up just for 1 second to be recognized? Give these guys a hand. Thank you. We appreciate it very much. The wisdom and advice from this group is going to make sure that the science gets done right and that we get the most bang for our buck doing that. Thank you. We also have already a bunch of customers for Blue Moon, many of whom are in the audience. They're going to be deploying science missions to the moon as well. People are very excited about this capability to soft land their cargo, their rovers, their science experiments onto the surface of the moon in a precise way. There is no capability to do that today. Let's think about some of the other things we can put on top of this. Here's a picture of a pressurized human rover. And it's really interesting, when you can land precisely, you can configure missions that use multiple landings. So you send the rover down first, lower it onto the surface using the Davit system, make sure it's all in good working order, and then send the astronauts. And speaking of sending the astronauts, here's a stretch tank version of what you see behind you. This is the stretch tank version of Blue Moon, which can soft land 6.5 metric tons onto the lunar surface. And this has an ascent vehicle on top. It's time to go back to the moon, this time to stay. Please make no mistake about this. Earth is the best planet. It isn't close. We do need to protect it. It's essential. It's our job. We're now big enough to hurt this planet. We have to use the resources of space. We must have a future for our grandchildren and their grandchildren of dynamism. We cannot let them fall prey to stasis and rationing. And it's this generation's job to build that road to space so that the future generations can unleash their creativity. When that is possible, when the infrastructure is in place, just as it was for me in 1994 to start Amazon, when we have that infrastructure in place, for the future space entrepreneurs, you will see amazing things happen. And it will happen fast. I guarantee it. People are so creative once they're unleashed. And if this generation builds the road to space, builds that infrastructure, we will get to see thousands of future entrepreneurs building a real space industry. And I want
New discovery. The lunar surface is periodically releasing water.
What we discovered is that the surface releases its water when the moon is bombarded by micrometeoroids. This is especially noticeable during meteor showers. What we also found is that the surface that's releasing the water is being protected by a layer of few centimeters of dry soil that can only be breached by large micrometeoroids. When the micrometeoroids impact the surface of the moon, most of the material in the crater is vaporized. There is also a shock wave that propagates outward. That shock wave carries enough energy to release the water that's coating the grains of the soil.
So what exactly is the reason I believe allowing limited, carefully controlled private land ownership on the moon is so important? For the very same reason land ownership has been so important for the exploration and expansion of human society here on Earth throughout human history generally, and specifically for us in America, key to the entire development of the United States for more than 200 years, from sea to shining sea, ocean to ocean. Because land is the ultimate store of value. Whatever one does on land, whether on Earth or on the moon, it is the land below it that is essential to every use. The ultimate owner is the land owner. Everything that takes place on any plot of land is dependent on the land owner and why land is so valuable. So whether it is Jeff Bezos or thousands of others, individuals, new ventures, well-established companies, or nations, their return to the moon is most valued in terms of the ability to own the lunar land they develop. It is where the greatest value lies. Lunar land ownership will become a very powerful store of value and the best means of creating value on the moon and having investors eager to invest in all kinds of lunar ventures that will fuel our return to the moon and our earthly economy too in the coming decade.